Anna, the Yarn Randomizer, and this should be video number 6. And I got a bunch of stuff to cover, trying to catch up, and should be ahead of the game going forward here, but it's been a busy couple of weeks. I did want to make sure that if you're a regular viewer, welcome back, and if you're a new viewer, welcome. And just a quick description is the reason I call it the Yarn Randomizer is because I pick randomly from my stash to do projects for the most part. And so those will come up later. I have my husband actually draw. I have a bucket of chips that correspond to all the yarns in my stash, and he picks out a chip, and then that's the next yarn I use. But yeah, and so it makes it almost like a game to do that. Okay, so first things first, what I'm wearing. This is the Easy, it's a scarf by Martina Behm. I'm hoping I'm saying that right. But this is really, I talked about this, I think, in my last shawl retrospective, but this was a very easy pattern that does a nice contrast with a kind of multicolored yarn with a shift in the direction partway through. And as described, it's very easy, and it produces, it's a great one skein shawl. And I actually knit this while I was in Peru in 2019 for the most part. I don't know if I finished it there, but I knit the bulk of it while I was there. Exploring, we went to see the ruins in Choqquequirao, a little place where we did a special hike up to the area and explored those ruins down there. And it was really an amazing trip. Yeah, I highly recommend the pattern. I'll share a link and stuff below to it. But yeah, again, great one skein shawl pattern. Now, let's see, I think finished objects. Technically, completely finished objects, I don't have any. I've had a lot of stuff going on in the past 2 weeks, but I did finish the May colorway for the Jimmy Bean's Wool annual shawl. And so I got that completed. So let me pull that out of here. So here's the latest colorway, which I think is called Vintage, but all the details will be in my project and everything. And so this is an ongoing fade. Each month I get 80 yards of yarn as far as this annual shawl project for Jimmy Bean's Wool. And this year it's a fade, and so it's working its way through. I've had some unusual, as you can see in the past 2 months, I've had some unusual pooling happen. I don't mind. And so it's just kind of fun. I haven't looked ahead to see what the colors are, and I'm just watching the colors as they show up each month. And it's a nice break from everything else that I'm working on, just complete a little section of the shawl. And the neat thing is, at the end of the year, I have a pretty good sized shawl out of this annual project each year. And so, and I've covered those in some of my shawl retrospectives. But this one's going along really well. Actually, I should show the bag I keep this in. I think this is still, oh dear, I'll link it below. Oh my goodness, I'm drawing a complete blank on the name, but I'll link it below. I've got a couple of bags from this shop. Actually, there should be, is there no tag? Oh dear. Oh, yes, here we go. Ah, Stitching Plaza, that's it. And so I've got a couple of bags from them, and I do like this. It's a simple construction with the drawstring. It's a couple layers thick. It has different color lining, but I really like this bag because of the license plates on it from all the different places and stuff. So it was one I picked up there, but I highly recommend it. I think she has an Etsy shop, but I'll link it below. Should show off some of my project bags here, but that's the only semi-finished, like finished for the month object that I have. And then everything else is a work in progress. So and I'm only going to go through the ones that I've actually made progress on since last time. So we'll go from my oldest projects to my newest ones that I'm working on. So I think I've mentioned before that I'm working on a sweater in parallel with my friend Levon. And so we're doing the Wednesday sweater by Petite knit. It's a bulky gauge. I think in the pattern they have you carry along mohair with a worsted or Aran. I'd have to take a look at it. But Levon and I are using a bulky yarn from, I believe, Cascade. These Eco Plus Peruvian colors. And so this might be Blackberry is the name of the colorway. And so we finally got to the point where we had knit the top section, the back part, and then the two front parts, and then joined it together, you see, to show the neck. And then we got down to the point where brought the arms together. It's a drop shoulder construction, and it's knitting up really nicely and very quick. So I'm trying to keep ahead of her to get to where we get the next milestone. It has a split hem. And so once I get down to that point, I'll stop and wait again until she gets to that point. And then we'll do that together to show, so she can see how to do that. And then I'll continue. So this sweater sometimes waits for periods of times, but I've been able to do a lot of knitting on it. And actually these balls of yarn of this Eco Plus are so big. All of this is from one skein. I've just gotten to the end of one skein, and I'm getting ready to join the next one. And right now I have it on two sets of needles, so I was trying it on to see how it fit. I'll actually post a picture. I might post a picture one of these locations here, so you can see what that looks like and stuff. I want to make it the same size as one of my favorite sweatshirts, and so it's 4 inches on the split hem, so I'm taking it down to where it's 4 inches above the length of this sweatshirt, and then I'll do the split hem so I get a similar fit to that sweatshirt. And that's a trick I highly recommend. If you have sweaters, even if they're like sweaters you bought and that kind of stuff, or sweatshirts, or clothing that you like the way it fits, it's often a great guide for deciding what size, how much ease to have in a sweater and everything. And I do that. I have a golden standard sweater that I use. It's probably an LL Bean or Lands' End sweater. That's my kind of reference for how I like sweaters to fit. Okay, so next, it's a tragedy. As I joked in one of my videos about knitting horror stories. So I have my swanky chic shawl, and it is, I will say right now, it is stalled until I do a fix. So what happened was I was working on this on the sofa, and I set it down, and I got up to go get something, and I caught my foot on the yarn, and before I knew it, I had dragged apart the needles and undid a bunch of the stitches. Now, right now, I have a straight needle in there kind of as a sort of a lifeline until I can sit down and really figure out what's going on here and what I've done. I'm hoping, the worst case scenario, I have to rip back a few rows, but I'm hoping I can repair it in place. And I've been saving this to record a fix video so I can show how I go about doing the fix, and so you can watch me in the gory details once I record that. But up to this point, I've gotten through, I think 6 of the different colors on the shawl, and I'm really happy with how it's turning out. It's going to be a nightmare weaving in all these ends. And right now, I'm almost up to the 7th colorway, and that's going to be this, and I'll have the project link below. You can see what the names of all the colors are and stuff, but it'll be this very dark navy yarn that came from a Les Garçons Christmas set from 2021. I'm using it for not its intended purpose, but this is what I decided to do with it because I favor shawls over cowls, and so I decided to do this. But yeah, so this will be coming next, but first it has to be fixed. And so that'll be a challenge, but it should be doable. It's doable regardless. It's just how much work it takes to fix it, whether I have to rip back multiple rows or not. And so we'll see how that turns out. The next thing is my hitchhiker, which I was doing in parallel, and it's the only reason I've kind of set it aside for a moment because I'm trying to keep it in parallel with the swanky chic shawl, kind of just as a game I finish a tooth as I finish a section on the Swanky Chic shawl, so at some point they'll come to completion at about the same time. But I'm super happy with how this is turning up. I'm 32 teeth into this, and it's turning out so nice. And you see little bits of pooling there that are looking really neat. And I thought this yarn would work out so nice. This is oh, I think a black cat yarns. It's linked below. Should have better notes than this, but this is the Eye of Sauron is the name of the color, but it really reminds me of Campfire, of ashes and flames and everything. I'm so happy with how it worked out, and this time I actually decided, I'm a very tight knitter, and so I decided to use a size 4 needle with this one, and I'm very happy with how it's coming out much softer than my previous two hitchhikers. I'm very happy with the texture, and I think it'll be interesting. We'll do a cross compare and see how much bigger it ends up too. But I did already check. I have enough to do all 42 teeth. I have a little spreadsheet that I use to figure that out, and that's linked in my project, I think, in one of my hitchhiker projects. I'll make sure it's linked in this one. But highly recommend the pattern. It always produces such a neat little shawl, and it's a great one skein shawl. And there's an easy way with using the spreadsheet that I have. You can track to see if you're going to have sufficient yarn to finish it for all 42 teeth. You can always do less. You can do more. My thing was to try to hit the 42. That's what the pattern's designed for. But yeah, that one's going along really well. And then I started. I can't remember if I showed this last time, but I had started this little cat stuffy, and I have this is a design I just made up, and I'll put all the details in the project page, but it's effectively like knitting a sock, sort of. So this is the head, and I'll actually sew down these two corners to make the little ears, and I'll embroider a little face on here. And I've stopped right here because this is the head. And what I'm thinking of doing, now I could do the head, do the length for the body, and then what I want to do is attach these two layers to each other on this head so that it's like a little separate stuffed area. So the question is, do I stuff it a little bit now and bring these two together, or do I just leave it as a long open tube and sew through the layers later? But I think I'm going to slightly stuff it now. And then I have a technique that I've used for double knitting to attach two layers together if you want them attached together. I should have brought that hat. I have a hat that I double knit for my husband, and what I do is it's fold over, it's knit all the way, it's double knit all the way, and it has this folded over edge, and about an inch in, I attach the two layers of the hat to each other so you have a very definite edge to the hat. And I did that by knitting a stitch on the front layer and the back layer with the same yarn, and then alternating the yarns all the way across. In this case, I can just do it with the same yarn, but the idea would be to alternate the front and back stitches on here, knitting back and forth, and then proceeding to continue with the tube again after that's done. And so that'll separate out, but that means stuffing this a little bit before I do that. And so I will get that done and get on to the next step so we can show how that ended up looking next time. But it should make a really cute stuffy. So it'll be about this big, the body will be about twice as long, and then it'll have two legs that are like half the size, and I'll pick up and knit two arms on it, and then I'll stuff the body with catnip, with a fabric bag pouch full of catnip. And my goal is to get a picture of the cats snuggling with the little stuffy cat. My sons have 3 cats, and so I thought I would send this along for their cats to cuddle up with. All right, so that's the progress on that. Now, everything else is about kind of what's coming. And also, I have to go through, I did a couple of biggie, nice events between the last podcast and this one, I went to the Twisted River Fiber Retreat up in Cleveland, and Cuyahoga Falls, I believe was the town, and then also went to the Great Lakes Fiber Fest, Fiber Show, and we'll go over that too, because there's a lot, got a lot of stuff to go through. But first, let's get to the Yarn Randomizer picks. So I started doing short videos that show the Yarn Randomizer picks, and I'm going to do that going forward, that each time I have my husband pull a coin out of the jar, I'll do a little short to show what it is, but I'll just show what got picked, and then we'll talk here about what I'm going to do with it. So the first, this is number 18 for 2023, and this was yarn number, if you can see it here, there it is, 141 out of my stash. And this is so coincidentally, this shawl that I'm wearing I knit while I was in Peru. Well, this ball of yarn, this skein of yarn, I picked up while I was in Peru, and I always love to go somewhere and find yarn to pick up when I'm on a vacation. And I went into a shop, and they had some skeins of labeled yarn, but and there's a couple of those in my stash, but this was this lonely single skein of yarn sitting on the shelf, and it feels amazing. It's incredibly soft. It's clearly alpaca, and it's got this really neat, if you can see that, marled kind of, it's got two things twined together, a fluffier strand and then a finer strand that's multicolored. And so the idea is, what was interesting was I had no idea what this was, but the other yarn I bought off the same shelf had a company name on it called Inca Sign. Now, I don't think they produce yarn for sale anymore, although they make clothing. And so this is Inca Sign. Oh, let me look in my stash really quick. Oh, actually, I'll look at my queue, because that's where I'll have it. And there it is, right there. Ah, Sathiri is the name of this yarn. And I think it's the only skein of it in all of Ravelry. And nobody else has this documented. I've never seen it anywhere else, so it's kind of a lone, kind of a lone ball of yarn. But it's a bulky, based on the information that's there, and it definitely looks like a nice bulky yarn. And my goal is to make a hat, and I found a really neat hat. It's called it's BUN hat, bun hat, and it's a hat that has a kind of a flap at the back, and I kind of like the look of it. I thought this would look really nice in it, so I've got that queued up now, and that'll be a fun knit to do. But again, it's indescribable how soft this actually feels. And so that's the Yarn Randomizer pick 18 for the year. The next one was some leftovers, and so it was Yarn Randomizer pick number 55 for the year. And it's this Cascade 220 Superwash Merino in this nice sort of military green or olive green. And I had made an 1898 hat for my husband out of this. And this is a pattern I really highly recommend. This brim here is 2 layers of garter stitch with this slip stitch edging on it. It's a very clever construction, and it's a free pattern, and it uses worsted yarn. I can knit one of these up in basically 2 days. It's really fast. This one, though, I altered the original pattern so that it would be larger, because my husband has an extra large, or extra large noggin, as he likes to say. And so if you want to see how to size this up, I've got that included in my pattern notes, which I'll link below. So what I've got is about 20 yards of this. And sometimes I'll combine it with other, I'll combine a remnant with other yarns or that kind of thing. But I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, I don't know. And so I thought about it for a little while, and then I settled on, if anybody's got this, Elizabeth Zimmerman is an amazing knitter. I recommend checking out her books and that kind of thing, and I think I've got them all. And this one is Knitter's Almanac, and they're in the summer, so that you can knit little things. There's a chapter called Christmas Fiddle Faddle in the Wilds, and so it's got little ornaments and such that you can knit. Now, I've knit the little trees they have in here from this book before, and used them to decorate the tree. And so I thought I would just use this to see how many, maybe 1 or 2 trees I can squeeze out of that little bit of yarn. So it'll be a nice, quick project, something that's, doesn't make me too warm when it's hot, although today is a little cool. We had a front come through yesterday. But yeah, so that's what I'm going to use that for. And I've got that linked up in my queue already as well. Then so I had my husband make 3 picks out of the Yarn Randomizer, because what I was really doing was I was fishing for a sock weight yarn, because I wanted to have something on, ready to go that I could pick up and make a pair of socks out of. And so the next number he pulled was 73, and that ended up being this coloring book yarn. And I had picked this up because I'd seen other people use their yarn, and there's some great self-striping yarns in this coloring book yarn. And this one's Vintage Holiday. And the really cool thing is the red sections are larger, and then there's a lot of the white, and it separates 3 different shades of green in the striping. So if you look in my queue, go to this yarn. If you go to this colorway and look at things made of it, they look really great. So I thought of knitting a plain sock, but I've really enjoyed having some little details in the sock. So I've got a pattern. Let's see, let me check the queue. Oh, I'm not going to pronounce this right. Les chaussettes de la, oh boy. Oh, I shouldn't even try that last word. Oh my goodness. It's like, I'll put the link below, but it's basically, it's a plain sock, but it has a cable running up the back of the leg. And so I thought that would look really cool. So you could see the regular stripes on this self-striping yarn on the main part of the sock, but right up the back will be this little cable that's going up that I think will be a really nice detail and fun to do. And so that's my plan for that. So all of this is in my queue. All the picks are there and stuff. And so that's all set to go now, I think. So that's all the Yarn Randomizer picks. And so the next thing to talk about is I went to the Twisted River, excuse me. It's for the yarn shop called the Harps and Thistles up in Cuyahoga Falls in the Cleveland area. And I was looking for a retreat to do because I had signed up for and then missed 2 retreats due to stuff going on here at the first, these first months of the year. And so I felt like I needed a break somewhere. And so I was able to find this retreat that was within driving distance. And I went up there for it, and it was amazing. So the central, they had 3 classes that were taught by Ann Hansen of Bare Naked Wools. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. And they were really fun classes, and it was great. If you have never, if you are an avid knitter, and if you have never done a retreat, I can't recommend it more. I started doing retreats about 1.5 years ago, and it's a must for me a couple times a year, because there's nothing like hanging out with other people who are as excited about it as you are and as into it, and it's just great because there's so much you can share and everything, where you show your knits to most people who don't knit. I remember one of my favorite moments was showing this sweater I had put a lot of work into, and I wore it into work or something like that. And so he says, "Oh, I'd pay $30 for that sweater." I'm thinking, oh, that would probably buy a ball and a half of the yarn that I put into this sweater. So, so it's nice to be among your peers, among your folks who are like-minded, and it's a lot of fun. So, out of all the retreats I've gone to, they had the most amazing swag bag I've ever gotten. So first of all, it came with a very large bag, so this big canvas bag. And there was another one inside too. I've got it sitting around somewhere, but it was more than one. So it's this bag and another bag inside. And this was chock full of yarn. And how I'm going to do all this, for those who don't know, I don't want to describe it as a yarn diet, but basically in order for a yarn to become part of my Yarn Randomizer, I have to use twice as much yarn to bring it into my stash. So if it's 400, if it's a fingering weight skein that's 400 yards, I have to use up 800 yards in order for that to be able to come in, get a number, become part of the picks. And so this is going to be a real challenge to get all this in. So I'll just start pulling all this out here and show it all to you. And so this was everything that came in. This is everything that was in the swag bag. Okay. So first thing is this Twizzlefoot. This is a fingering weight yarn, and it's this really neat, like varied and very lightly marled sock yarn. So I really liked the look of that. I'm thinking that, you know, it could be socks or it could make a really nice one skein shawl, that kind of thing. So really nice. And then let's grab this one. Wool Pop is this one, and this is their, I think this is another fingering weight yarn. Let's see. Oh, I'm wrong. 284 yards, more like a DK perhaps. I'll link all of this below. And so really beautiful red. And you can see in here, it's got the superwash wool and some bamboo. And so you can see a shimmer kind of in the yarn from the bamboo that's in there. It takes the dye a little differently. So this was really nice. Then there were 3 skeins of this Barocco Vivo, and this one is it 100% cotton? Yes, it's 100% cotton, and it's this really neat color. And there's enough here, I think, to do a project. They gave us a whole book, and this isn't even covering all the patterns they gave us. If I'll actually name the pattern books, the patterns I got out of there shortly, but so this was enough to do a sweater. I actually brought another skein to combine with this to make a very specific pattern. But yeah, it's lovely. And people had different colors, and you could, you know, if you wanted to, swap with other people, if you wanted to trade colors and everything, but really nice. So we got 3 skeins of that. And again, this is all just the swag bag. Odo's wondering why I'm dropping all this yarn on the floor. There was a sock blank from the house yarn, basically. This is the 1918 Yarn Company. And this is what's called the double knit sock blank. Basically, it's 2 strands of fingering that have been knit up together and then dyed. And so then you can work from it and knit a pair of socks 2 at a time and have them come out identically, since they were knit together as 2 strands all the way through. I have a few sock blanks in my inventory. I have not tried one yet. So, and I know some people knit directly from the blank and stuff, but I'm not sure. I'll have to think about that. So the first time it comes up, I'll make that decision here together and we'll figure it out. I may wash it and dry it first to get it a little less kinky. But yeah, so another, and again, part of the swag bag. And then there were some smaller amounts of yarn. There was a sample, a mini skein of cornbread and honey. I have some of their other yarn. I've bought their yarn before. In 2020 with the pandemic, I was trying to support local Ohio dyers. and I picked up some of their yarn in that process. So this will make a nice little project, and I think, yeah, it's the DK. So I can probably do something very similar to the cozy I have on my glass back there with this. And there were 2 samples from, I think this is Blue Sky Fibers. So there's this alpaca silk, unbelievably soft. And then, and this is I believe this is a fingering weight, sport weight. Boy, I'm lying all over the place here today. And then they have an Aran weight that is alpaca and merino, and again, feels absolutely luscious. So a couple little sample skeins of those. And then we got this little set of 4 different bare naked wools to use, and as an exercise in one of the classes, we use the same size needles and we knit a pattern that we picked out personally out of one of our own little pattern books, or they had some you could use. And we took the same yarn and worked it on the same size needle. And as a result of doing this, I mean, to me, this was a great idea on Bare Naked Wool's part. I was so fascinated by this yarn that I ended up picking up enough of it to do a sweater. But yeah, their thing is like minimal treated yarn that they get from, they source out from smaller farms and stuff like that. And it's just, I'll link their website below. But they had a whole collection of sweaters and everything. And Ann Hansen's patterns are just amazing. And it was really great to get your mitts on the yarn and see what it feels like and stuff. So I have a couple of things to show on that front. And then finally, out of the swag bag, besides the patterns that were also in there, was a little sample from 3 Irish Girls. They were having a trunk show, and there's a little thing. And there were all kinds of little other things in there were coupons for local merchants, and I wanted to get some dog treats there. And we got to make candles as one of our little events, and we had great meals there. And it was really just a great retreat. I can't recommend it enough. Now, there were also, everybody at some point eventually got a door prize, or if you want to call it that. And so let me grab that. And so I got as my door prize this Malabrigo, what is this here? Rastita. So I got this really nice Malabrigo Rastita. I believe it's DK weight. And the person attending next to me got the same colorway, and she said, that she was concerned it would just linger and not get used, so she gave it to me. So I actually have 2 of these, which gives me enough to do something more substantial. I really appreciate her giving that to me, because 310 yards, of one is one thing. 620 yards, I can squeak out a ranunculus out of this. And so we'll see. But that still has to be earned into the stash, into my Yarn Randomizer. But it's in layaway. So that's what I mark my yarns in my stash, is they're in layaway until I've earned them in here. And I've got to come up with a rule at the end of the year if I haven't earned everything out of layaway. I have forced myself to destash in the past. So, all right. Oh, and so they were having a trunk show for 3 Irish Girls. And as I went back there and looked, I could not resist this yarn here. This is their sock, Lux 2. And I really, this colorway is called Come Together, but I loved the speckling all over it. So I thought this would make a spectacular pair of socks. And so I decided to pick that up. So that was something I picked out. And then with all the bare naked wools we were getting to see, and all the sweaters we were seeing knit, all the samples that they had, and the fact that we got to try that yarn ourselves, I picked up two different yarns from Bare Naked Wools. And so I picked up, this is a lace weight yarn Gotland lace, and they had a beautiful shawl knit in this, and it has a very unique texture and look. So it's from Gotland sheep, and so I bought 2 of them, and my goal is to make a sweater out of this. So I have some different ideas, but that's what I plan to do. And yes, I hear you cry. Sweater out of lace weight yarn. Well, you know, I'm a glutton for punishment on this kind of thing sometimes, but I can't wait to work with this. Now, interestingly, Odo is very good about not messing with my yarn, but I had this sitting down on the floor for a moment, and it's the first time I've seen him go over and get interested. I'm sure it's a little more sheepy than some of the other yarns that I have. So he was kind of, showed a little interest, so this moved up off the floor right away. Now, the other one was the one that we got to try out in our little sample swatch. And grab this. And so this one is Targi Tango Sport. And it just had such an interesting feel to it. I loved knitting it, and I looked at some of the samples, and so I picked up 3 of those, so I would have enough to do maybe an interesting little short sleeve sweater or something. And I have some ideas. If you look in my stash at the entry, you'll see some things I'm thinking about making and stuff, but mainly maybe a short sleeve sweater, maybe with some interesting detail around the collar or something. But yeah, so nice. And so really recommend checking them out. And speaking of bare naked wools, let's see, I think, am I down to, all right, yeah. Oh, yes. One more thing to show you from that shop, the Harps and Thistles, to go with the 3 skeins of the other cotton yarn I got. I picked up this. And again, I'll probably stick up an image here. There's a t-shirt that's an Intarsia t-shirt that uses, you know, mainly one color, but has a little contrast in another color. And I thought there was enough blue in the orange-based yarn to make this a really nice contrast. So I picked up a skein of this to go with these other 3 to make a sweater. And then before I move on to the last thing from Bare Naked Wools, I wanted to cover, I did go to the Great Lakes Fiber Show. I've been there every year the past 3 years. And I actually, so I'm walking through there, and Simona, who is one of the folks who's commented on videos and stuff, calls out my name. And I go, oh, we met, we got to talk, and it was really great to have a talk. So there's my my YouTube moment. I got recognized at the Fiber Show, which was really cool. And it was great to talk to you, Simona. And so while I was there, I couldn't resist visiting some of my favorite dyers. I do try to support Ohio dyers and where I can. And the one, so we'll talk about Laughing Cat first. Laughing Cat, she used to be in Ohio. She's down in Kentucky now, but I'll still support her because she's got some really incredible colors. She had a bin full of, this is very funny, it's like just happy accidents. And so there's no mistakes, just happy accidents. And so I guess this was a skein that didn't quite meet what she wanted. And so I picked this up out of her bargain bin. And it's a worsted weight, and I plan to do one of those 1898 hats with this at some point, would be the plan. But I love the colors, the warm orange and yellow and the black. And the name of the colorway is Campfire, which totally makes sense. And so I added that into layaway. It's into layaway. And then I stopped by the Fiber Seed, which is one of my favorite dyers. I've made a lot of 1898 hats from their stuff, and I've got a lot of their yarn in my stash. And so I use this colorway is Neon Lights, dyed, I think, in the Kaleidoscope. She actually defines the different ways that she dyes, whether things are half speckled, half and half, Kaleidoscope. There's a variety of descriptions, so she's very consistent about how she dyes the different yarns. And so I love this one because it's this black with these really bright neon colors in it. And so I picked this up specifically because I want to do a musselburgh hat. Now, the other interesting thing about her fingering yarn is it is 100, this is a 136 gram skein. So it's got 510 yards of yarn as a result. And I'm thinking that I can make a really nice long, like with a lot of, maybe with some extra in the back. Oh my gosh, what do they call it? Slouchy, that I'll make a much more slouchy musselburgh out of this. I made my son a hat out of this colorway on worsted, in the 1898 hat, of course, and it was hilarious. The last time I visited him, he said, hey, it's frayed a little bit at the back. Oh, maybe I can fix it for you. So he brings it out. This hat, the entire back, like back half of it is destroyed. It's like completely coming apart at the whole lower edge. So I was like, I don't think I'm fixing that. But I'm going to see if I've got yarn. I've got this in worsted also that I already had in my stash. And so I'll probably make him another hat. And I also picked up a little bit of some black worsted to go with some of the worsted yarn I have from them already in my stash, where sometimes when I'm doing the 1898 hat, I like to finish the very top of it when I'm doing these multicolors off in a solid, so that it doesn't get those the little micro stripes. Instead, I like it with all the flashing, and then I go to the solid to keep it kind of a little more cohesive. But yeah, so those were, I added those to the stash as well. And I think we're close to going through everything. So in the process of enjoying like Ann Hanson's designs and buying some of her yarn and everything, they talked about this mystery wool along that they do every year as part of Ann Hanson's yarns and patterns and everything. And at the show, I was kind of like, oh yeah, you know, I've got, you know, this one, the annual shawl from Jimmy Bean's Wool I'm working on, but I hemmed and hawed about it. Well, I finally got a link, and I think they gave enough information. It would be a triangular piece, and so I thought, oh, now okay, a shawl. Yes, I think last year it was a cowl, and so I was a little hesitant if it was a cowl. I'm definitely more of a shawl wearer. And so I thought, oh, a triangular shawl. Oh, I could not resist. It starts tomorrow, which might be when I put this video up. And so I ordered the set for making the triangular shawl. And so you get 5 packages, A, B, C, and D. And here's A. And it's sport weight. And the first step of the pattern will be released tomorrow. And so I'll skein this up and start this tomorrow. And they gave little starting instructions where you do provisional, get ready to do a provisional cast on. So I got some spare yarn and did a provisional cast on of the needed stitches already. So I'm really ready to go on this. And so I'll do I'm trying to think. I want to make sure I don't spoil things for anybody, but what I will probably do on the day that you open the package, I won't post anything, but the following day, I'll put a post on Instagram and on YouTube, and maybe I'll even do it as a short and share it that way. But I can't wait to open this tomorrow. This will be fun and get it skeined up and everything. And I think that is everything. I think that was more than enough. And so I really appreciate you coming to watch if you made it all the way through this. I'm just trying to think. I want to ask you to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this. And I've got a lot of other videos planned, and now that my time is kind of freed up, I will be getting to those. I've got a lot of stuff in the works that I want to show as far as techniques. I'll show that repair. I've got a couple of techniques I want to show. I just recently shared how to use a Turkish cast on with self-striping socks, and got that one posted up. I'm going to do the next step of my shawl, the stash tour. I've got a big bag of yarn out in the main room in the house, and it's getting ready to go back on the table and go through that. And then I definitely want to get to my last shawl retrospective. And once I do that, the last, I think it's eight shawls, but 2 new ones that I've made since I started the podcast, so I'll probably include those as well. Once I do that, I will look at doing a sock retrospective next and get those all covered for the ones that I still have. So thanks for watching, and hope to see you again. I'll get more videos out soon. Again, it's great to hear from folks who comment, and I'll let you know if I'm planning to attend any fiber events and stuff. So if you see me there, you can shout. You can get my attention. I'm happy to talk, because if you want to geek out about knitting, I'm ready. All right, so thanks for watching, and enjoy your knits.